Hey, it's Garland, and this is the Empowered Way. On this episode of the Empowered Way, I'm going to tackle something or a topic that is usually kind of done in different parts, but I'm going to do it all as one part. I'm actually going to be talking about love, sin, and what I mean by the empowered or the empowered way and how it relates. Usually we talk about love and all kinds of things about love. And we talk about sin. We preach about sin and against sin, obviously. But usually they don't end up in the same lesson. But I think they are all very integrally related to each other. And I don't think you can talk about one without really also talking about the other. I think this is part of the essence of being empowered or seeking what I would call the empowered way for yourself, is that you understand the connection of these two. I've already had episodes about our spirituality, but I do want to emphasize that we are all spiritual people. We are all spiritual. We're just spiritual. We are a part of the essence or the oneness of the universe that we call God, or maybe that power or that consciousness or that intelligence or whatever you want to call it, how you want to characterize it. All goes by various names depending upon your culture and your background and what you prefer. But I have been comfortable with the term God because everyone is typically comfortable using that term and knows basically what they mean by it. And so this God of the universe, this God that is all powerful and all everywhere present and all knowing, this God that so many different faiths believe in and believe about, is the God that I want to talk about. And it's been by definition, this God comes from a spiritual dimension that's outside of our physical presence, but yet it is we call it a spiritual dimension. And because we are, in a sense, created or made in the likeness of this God or the image of this God, we are by definition spiritual. I like the idea that, you can't get any more spiritual than you already are because we are all spiritual by nature. And we have a physical presence. Our physical presence is a manifestation of this spiritual dimension or the spiritual self. And because we have a physical presence, that's basically what we know. That's what we understand is our physical selves in our physical world. But we also have this godness in us, and it's not this godness in us because we are a part of that godness. We live and move and have our very being in that godness, as Paul told people in Athens. And he called it the unknown God, the one that people just hadn't figured out yet. So I'm going to tell you about that one. And so he said, we live and move and have our being in this God presence. God is everywhere. God is all-knowing. God is all-powerful. We've heard that over and over again, and I think we probably believe that. But quantum physics, just in my lifetime, has discovered or has at least decided or determined that the universe is made up of this energy that we don't understand and don't even really know what it is, but we know it's there. And so I say, well, that sounds a lot like God to me, the way we talk about God. So our science and our spiritual or our superstitions or whatever you want to call it are kind of speaking about the same thing, just using maybe different kind of words and coming from different places. But I'm comfortable in saying that we are spiritual by nature. We can't get any more spiritual than we are. We are born spiritual. We are spiritual. And so I think the secret to our spirit self is to be able to learn how to live in this spiritual presence and to unleash the energy and the power that is available to us as a result of that. That's what I mean by unleashing the creative energy of God, love. And so I believe in those principles or those foundational things, those foundations, and that makes everything possible. Now, like most other people, I guess maybe like all other people alive today, we don't really understand all of the aspects of that, but we do have a pretty firm belief that it does exist and it is going on and we are a part of it. So I'm okay with that. And that particular understanding anchors our prayer life and our faith and many other things, our belief systems and many other things. So one of the things that we have to then agree to or talk about is where love comes in. And love is also an attribute of God, godness, because our Bible tells us that God is love. God talks about, or the Bible talks about love as an aspect of this godness. And it's not romantic love. although romantic love probably comes out of that. And it's not just brotherly love, but even though brotherly love kind of comes from that. But it's this aspect of love that is, in a sense, the definition of God, or part of the definition of God, or an innate characteristic of God, or this energy. This thing they call love is this hopefulness, this abiding presence, this goodness, this godliness that comes out of the God energy, and it is definitive of God. As the Bible says, God is love. And when we talk about knowing that God is love, or acting that way, what we mean is we want to be more loving in the way we act toward one another. That's what I think Jesus was talking about when he said, when he was asked what the greatest commandment was, and he said, the Lord your God is one, and therefore love your God with all your heart and soul and mind, and so forth. And then the second is like the first, love your neighbor as you love yourself, as yourself. And so this idea of lovingness and loving and being a creature of love, or a spirit of love, is an aspect of God. And we're told, in a sense, or challenged in a sense, to be perfect in that kind of way, to be perfect in our love and act out of love. And so that's kind of a standard. I mean, that's what we're shooting for. That's the perfect. But then the Apostle Paul tells us, we're not perfect like God. We always fall short of that. And this is where I want to bring in the idea of what sin is. We've got the idea through our Christian heritage that sin is this rebellion against God. But that might be an aspect of it, but that's not all of it. The word sin that's used for sin in the original Greek, which the Bible is translated from, is a word that simply means falling short, or missing the mark, I guess is the right way to say that, just missing the mark. And even in Hebrew, the words were similar, and it just simply means when you sin, you just miss the mark, you just miss the point, you just don't get it. And that's the aspect of sin that I want to talk about, because I think that's more accurate to say, well, we missed the mark. Well, what mark did we miss is the question. The New Testament tells the story of Jesus, and it says that the writer says that Jesus came to save the world from its sin. Well, what sin did he come to save us from, and what sin has he saved us from? It's not just carnal sin, which that's probably an aspect of it, but the Judaism of his day was sinning and missing the mark of what that relationship with God was all about, and what the temple was supposed to be about, and what their religion was supposed to be about. And had gotten off the track, and he came to get it back on track. And it was that effort that got him killed, because he evoked the ire of the temple leaders and the people who had a vested interest in keeping the status quo in the temple. He was kind of ruining their gig. And as they said in one of their meetings, we got to get rid of this Jesus guy, because all the people are starting to believe in him, and the Romans are going to come along and get tired of all this, and they're going to take us out, and they're going to ruin our thing. They're going to ruin our place in the world. And so the idea was they wanted to get rid of Jesus because they were messing up their temple gig, power and money, and that's what really got him killed. And so there's that aspect of what Jesus was talking about, where he says, I came to help you all get back on track. You're missing the mark. You're sinning. You're missing the mark. And indeed, whenever he talked about sin in the New Testament and the Gospels, he wasn't so much carrying on about carnal sin. He was carrying on about other things where people were missing the mark. And he was a lot more critical of the self-righteous than he was of the sinner, because the self-righteous were missing the mark of what their religion was supposed to be about. And they were forgetting the real needs of the people who were struggling and hoping for a better life and so forth, which is really what the Beatitudes are about. Jesus looked out on the crowd and he saw those people who were poor in spirit and hungering and thirsting for righteousness, and he said, hey, it's going to work out. We're going to get back to that. So missing the mark, I think, is the real aspect of sin, and I want to kind of limit my definition to sort of that thing, even though it's even more general than a specific sin, but it relates. Because if being perfect or being godly is the target, by definition, in a sense, we as human beings are continually falling short of that glory, as Paul said. We're falling short of that perfection of God's love and everything. And so Paul himself also wrote to his friends in Corinth about what this love is. In fact, he said love is so important in our way we think about God, is that no matter how special you might think you are, no matter how great your acts of faith or wisdom or anything else, if you don't have this aspect of love as a part of your life and makeup, then you're just making noise. You're a gong or a cymbal, and you're not really speaking to the true aspects of what it is to be a child of God in a sense, or a creature of God, or living in the spirit and wholeness of God. You're missing that mark. And so when he talks about what love is and is not, he is kind of saying what's on target and what's not on target. He said this is love, it's these things, and it's not those things. And the things that it was not were the things that were self-serving and selfish and greedy and rude and arrogant and divisive. All of those things are actions that are not of God's love. They are not of love. But the things that are of love are good and wholesome, and they help each other and nurture each other, and are kind and always hopeful and always seeing the best and always striving for the best. Seeking the nature of God and godliness, that's what love is. Love does that. Love lives in that kind of way and not the other way. And you can see that people are living out of love when they demonstrate those kinds of behaviors and actions. And they're not living out of love when they demonstrate the opposite, or the ungodly things, or the things that are not of love and not of God. They're sinning. They're falling short of the mark, of the intentional mark, when they are living beneath that, or they're going the wrong way or the other way, and their lives are exemplified by those behaviors rather than the behaviors that are God-like behaviors. And so sin is, in a sense, like saying it's not love. Sin is non-love. So when you're living a life that is what we say sinful, or continually missing the mark, or full of that kind of life choice, you are just living in a non-love place. You're living out of synchronization with the love of God. So love and sin are related to each other, because love is the target. Love is what we're shooting for, and demonstrating a life of love that is kind and generous and forgiving and wholesome and is pure and is all of those things that we would say is godly, is what we're shooting for. That's the target. And because we are falling short of it, we're not quite living up to it, we in a sense then are missing the mark, and that is the sin. And so they are related to each other. And what Jesus is telling us in his ministry is that you can find this relationship and this connection with God just by living that way, just by adopting the behaviors that are loving God ways. And if you do that, you are on the right path. I hope that makes some sense to you. And when I talk about living empowered, that's why I always describe it as unleashing the creative energy of God love. I believe you have to talk about God and love really in the same breath, because that seems to be the one element, the one aspect of God that just goes with God throughout the Word and throughout all of the history of our Judeo-Christian experience, and even in that of other religious faiths as well. So we're given some examples of what God love is, and Paul has said what he believes love is, and if we live affirmatively to try and create those kinds of behaviors in our life, then we are living in this aspect of God love. If we're not doing that, if you're seeing the unloving, uncaring, egomaniacal, self-serving, greed, envy, all those things that are enumerated as non-love or sinful, then we're on the wrong track. We're falling short. We're missing the mark. We are in sin in that respect, but we can be saved from that life by repenting and choosing to find a different way. It might be difficult for some people to really change those behaviors, or because they have vested interest in living the other way that they think is more important to them. But we have that choice, and that's why the Bible also tells us that we know a person in their heart by looking at the kind of life they live. And I might even say a godly life versus an ungodly life, a loving life versus an unloving life, a more holistic life rather than one that keeps falling short and missing the mark. I think that's it. And so I guess I'm a little preachy today, but I've been on this quest myself for many, many years, and I've been around the block a few times on what I believed and didn't believe, and if I was even a believer, or what, where am I coming from in my own understanding and my own life spiritual experience. And so here I am. I'm revealing myself to you kind of in this episode. But I hope it's something that you find stimulating and interesting to think about, or maybe it's something that will challenge you to reevaluate some of your own understandings and investigations into this aspect of God love in your own life. And I'll remind you that the Empowered Way is a way in which we unleash the creative energy of God love to make our lives, the lives around us, our world we live in, more wholesome and joyful and soulful. Because within this living this life, this God expressing this God love, hope it will make us help us to enliven our hearts, to find joy in our hearts, to enlighten our minds, to find spiritual wisdom, and to really understand and be perceptive, to be enlightened on our journey of life about all the possibilities that we have. Because this will help us to encourage our spirit. Our courage comes from the inside and encourages our spirit. And also, at the same time, hopefully it will help us to enlarge our expectations of living. We haven't even begun to tap the potential that we have in our lives, and that's what's so hopeful about all of this, is that our life can become even more and more rich as we live each and every day in this unleashing the full potential and the full abilities of this God love that's all around us. It's not something that's shoveled onto us. We abide in it. We live in it. All we have to do is open ourselves to it, unleash it. Well, that's the Empowered Way, and I hope that you'll join me on our next episode. I'm Garland McWatters.